17. Mutatis mutandis. Listen, Ace. She hardly noticed the smooth metal buttress that rose slowly up to hit her. The solid air grated the breath out of her lungs. Down the face of the watchtower she went like an ant on a playground slide, her head usurped by someone else's memories and dreams that had nowhere better to go. The doctor's memories were feeding into her mind. A moment. A single flute was playing somewhere. A gentle, slow, dreaming sound, recalling fields of tall, still grass on Lungbarrow Mountain before haytime. The baking wash of Elysian sunshine that warmed him through to the bones. A golden-winged beatitude fly that hovered lazily from one nodding pool of nectar to the next. The scent of hot, dried Gallifreyan earth. His cousins, full-grown babies born from the family loom, yet even they laughed occasionally, lured from the dust-webbed halls of the brooding house on lush-berrying trips in the summer woodlands. And no dinner for those that old housekeeper Sat Thralope found out, the arch-tyrant of his youth with her clay pipe, wispy beard and 20-way mirrors. Only a doctor. Wretched child, such a disappointment to the family and to the house. A memory frozen in music played on the instrument of imagination. Without changing its tonal meter, it could set myriad moods, a commentary on whatever scene it accompanies. A gesture of the hand makes it a courtly dance. A glance of the eye makes it a union of love. A single tear makes it the messenger of death. The timeless music of time. A line of cool melody from the flute, like the wind singing, so calming, so persuasive, so frightening. Both objective and deeply subjective. The fretwork on which perception is hung. Make of it what you will, the flute plays on. A tall woman slowly made her way across the grey plain. A grey shawl covered her head in the ancient manner. On her arm she carried a jar, a two-handled amphora decorated with figures frozen for eternity in a scampering dance. She reached the long black crack that split the plain across. Gently she inclined the jar. From its lip fell a trickle of dust. As the endless, timeless flute melody played, she stood pouring the glinting dust into the bottomless crevasse. Just as the mother goddess of the old-time legends had poured time itself into the void of the empty universe. The same tune stirring different memories, the dust of time glittering like falling mirrors, trickling like sand in an hourglass. To stop it, you might more easily stand a Pythia on her head. Hurry up, Ace. You're supposed to know when it's time. The doctor is waiting and the door is sliding shut. It is 11:58. Someone was shaking her. Come on, Ace, wake up, it's time. She resisted. The air had a chill. Her mind clung sluggishly to the safety of her dream rather than face the virtual nightmare of reality. Alice, in the book she'd been reading, was told she was just part of the sleeping Red King's dream, and when the king woke up, she would go out, bang, like a candle. Someone was tugging her up by her arm. She stumbled blearily after him along a dark street. Leave off! What are you doing? How did I get down? With extreme difficulty, said Shonzi. He flourished a selection of foil-wrapped biscuits at her as they ran. Idiot, she thought, and told him so. Please yourself. He turned and dragged her on faster. You fell, I jumped, he said. Some sort of energy field carried you down. I latched onto its tail. He dragged her round a sharp corner into another street. Seen the doctor yet? He asked as he went. She had spent months trapped in Iceworld, picking up Pigeon Galax speak and Pigbean Orcolqui. She could say, with some pride, that she could swear fluently in 11 alien languages. But Shonzi wasn't worth the effort. Not in this mood. Her back and legs ached, and her hands stung with friction blisters, like burn-up experienced on re-entering reality. The other hand was clamped into a fist shape. With a will of its own, its fingers resisted her attempts to open it. Something glinted in its clamped palm. Just stop a minute, will you? Nearly there. I said stop. She ground her feet into the dust and refused to move. We don't have time, Ace. She gave up on her hand. I'll tell you what got us down. It's the TARDIS, the Doctor's ship. This happened before when it was in trouble. It summoned us to help. It's sort of alive." "So?" "I thought it was destroyed, but it can't have been. It must be round here somewhere. Once we find the TARDIS, we'll find the Doctor. I know we will." There was a flash of light overhead, followed by a barrage of crackles. One of the stars had exploded in a cascade of plumed mauve sparks. The ground thundered again. The buildings around them creaked and swayed. The broken dome of the atrium rose nearby. They were close to the place that the dark phantom had guarded. "It's time, Ace. We have to find the TARDIS now, or it's too late." "But how? I don't know how." "He said, the Doctor told me, that the answer would come to find us." "In a dream?" she said in disbelief. Another tremor. Her hand jerked up and the fingers opened themselves. In Ace's palm sat the TARDIS key. She must have pulled it out of her pocket, or caught it as it jumped out. Shonzi seemed to understand. "You stay here. I'll send for help from the Grumblies." He started to run up the street. "What?" "The other phasals. They have to be fetched. Don't you understand, Ace? It's deliverance." He was gone before she could argue. Typical. You could tell who'd taught him a few things, like leaving stupid girls behind. The key fizzed in her hand. It had started to glow with a cold, pale blue light. When she pointed it in a different direction, it glowed brighter. She started to follow the track, using the key like a metal detector. The glow grew stronger as she moved down an alley and out into a small deserted street. The tremors were increasing. Outlets had appeared along the street, streamering off steam like New York sewer vents. She came to halt at a dead end. Nowhere to go, even though the key was glowing fiercely. At first she looked for a bleached grey police box, and then just a keyhole. But there was nothing. Only when she looked up the building did she see the trapdoor, halfway up the wall and out of reach. Across it lay the ladder, horizontal and strapped to the wall. She was sure it was part of the TARDIS. It was the attic, somehow jettisoned or deleted from the ship. Impossible to get at. Lightning from the clear sky accompanied the latest tremor. The buildings creaked. At the end of the street she saw Shonzi, the light flickering off his red hair. He was facing away from her. She ran towards him and he turned to meet her. He grabbed viciously at her arms. It was Vale. "Got you, you little troublemaker." She bit him on the wrist and pulled free. Up the shaking street she ran, with him right behind her. She felt his grip yank on her jacket. The key flew out of her hand. He sent her spinning across the street and lunged for the fallen key. With a flying tackle, Shonzi burst out of the shadows. He caught Vale off balance, their heads cracking together as they met. They threw up a cloud of dust, rolling across the ground in a knot of hatred. Above them, the buildings rocked in the tremor. With a roar, the steam vents erupted around them. Columns of steam forced up hundreds of feet into the atmosphere like blasts from volcanic funnels. Ace scooped up the glowing key. She looked up and yelled as the wall with the attic teetered and toppled down on them. A crash and a shower of loose stone were drowned by the roar of the steam. The upper wall had fallen forward as if hinged. It lay resting like a new ceiling overhead, balanced on the building opposite. But the trapdoor and ladder were still out of reach. Vale made a lunge at Ace. She felt his eyes burning hatred into her. Shonzi's arm wrenched him back. "Go on, Ace!" he yelled in a frenzy. "It's time!" One end of the ladder clattered down to the street. Ace ran up the steps, leaving them brawling in the dust and steam. She started to force against the trapdoor. Dust trickled down around her. The door wouldn't move. There was a keyhole set at the door's edge. She had hardly fitted the glowing key into place before the door flew up with a crash and she jack-in-the-boxed into the darkness above. The roar of steam and the distant clang of the tower bells vanished. It was peaceful here, still and calm. A single flame, with neither candle nor lamp to feed it, was fixed in the air. It imbued the room with a golden aura, an atmosphere so familiar from the vanished TARDIS. The sloping walls were raftered like the inside of a roof. This was the attic where Ace had never been. It smelt of pine resin. a good place for contemplation and dreaming. If this was the last remnant of the ship, then Ace was certain it was also the source from which all the apparitions had emanated. A figure was seated in a rocking chair, the only item of furniture. Cobwebs clung to him. Off his lap jumped the silver cat. It ran startled into the shadows. As Ace approached, the doctor's head nodded up and his eyes opened. She had a frightened glow inside, but this time she knew she wasn't wrong. At last everything was going to come together. "Doctor?" she said gently. He scrutinised her for a moment and then shuddered. His head turned slowly back and forth as he took in his surroundings. Through the open trap in the floor, silent lights flickered and wisps of steam crept in. The doctor sniffed and frowned at her again. "Well," he said, "and what sort of time do you call this?"